So just so everyone knows that I am recording this because I will be sending out a replay. So if you don't want to be on camera or your voice recorded, then maybe just put in the chat any questions or comments that you have. But I would love to hear you share, openly if that feels comfortable for you. Hi, new faces. I love the Christmas trees. So go ahead and get settled, close out any extra tabs, arrive in the space, and we'll get started. So I wanted to start with just sharing a little bit about who I am, because there's a lot of new faces in my social media space. I've been making a lot of new connections. And so I thought it would be helpful just to know a little bit about me and why I'm here. So my name is Kim. Hopefully you know that much already. And I'm a former therapist and former medical social worker. And now I am a life and leadership success coach for ambitious women, especially introverted, highly sensitive, and empathic women. I help them live empowered, authentic, rich, fulfilling lives and create success on their own terms. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the intentions of, why I've created this space, why I'm doing this training the way that I'm doing it, and why I even do the work in the world that I do. So I believe that each and every one of you, every woman really, deserves to experience joy and peace and balance and fulfillment and success, and whatever that means for her. I believe that we all deserve to feel well-balanced, well-nourished, well-loved, and well-supported. And I actually believe that when we all are in that state, when we're not in a state of anxiety and stress and overwhelm and burnout, that we actually become the balance and the peace and the joy that our world so desperately needs. And I hear myself saying that and I'm like, it sounds freaking cheesy, but that, honestly, that's what I believe. I think a lot of the imbalance that we see in ourselves is a reflection of what we see in the earth, Mother Earth, right? And my intention for this training specifically is that each and every one of you leaves changed somehow from this experience for the better. I want each and every one of you to experience a shift and be one step closer, one thought clearer on what you need to get to where you want to be, to stepping into the fullness of who you are, to claiming everything that you rightfully deserve as your birthright: joy, fulfillment, peace, happiness, balance. So I wanted to start with an exercise. Before we do that, I just want to state the agenda. I realize that would probably be helpful. So I'm going to guide us through an exercise first, and then we will dive into more of the training material. I will share a little bit more about one-to-one work with me if you're interested in exploring this at a deeper level. And then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So just take a minute to check in. This is our guided experience, self-check-in. If it feels good for you, you can close your eyes or create a soft gaze looking down at the ground and just get settled in your space. You can move your body any way that feels good. Maybe your neck feels a little stiff or your shoulders are a little scrunched, to see if you can maybe create some softness there. And just want you to breathe into any part that you notice is feeling a little tense. See if you can breathe in a little extra space, a little extra love, a little softness. Feel yourself breathing if that feels comfortable to you. Notice your heart beating. And notice what's here for you present in this moment. We spend a lot of our lives running around, putting out fire after fire, running from person to person, tending to their needs. This is just a moment for you to check in with yourself and just see what's here. Not judging as good or bad, right or wrong. Just a mental noting of what feels alive for you in this moment. Might notice any temperature, whether you're feeling heavy or light. Just take note of anything that might be here for you. And now I invite you to set an intention for yourself. Set an intention for the time you've set aside to be here, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. Who are you becoming? Set an intention about who you are becoming. What do you want to be doing? How do you want to be feeling? And where are you going? This is your moment, your invitation to decide. Decide it's happening. Know that seeing this in your mind's eye means it already exists. It's already available to you. You're that much closer simply by being present with it. And allow you to linger here a moment longer. Knowing that any feelings of resistance or fear or doubt that might come up are normal, but it's not where you've decided you're going. And when you feel ready, you can flutter your eyes open if they've been closed. Just ground yourself back into the space that you're in. That was really cool. So now that we've connected to ourselves, this is where I'm going to invite people that have their cameras off. It would be so wonderful if you could put them on, if only temporarily. Of course, you are free to do whatever feels right for you. But I'm going to invite us into an exercise where we place our gaze on another woman that's in the space with us. Hi, Lamanda. Thanks for putting on your camera. It's good to see you. So those of you that want to participate can go ahead and turn on your cameras. I'll give a couple moments longer. And those that do not want to participate, hi, Terry. Nice to see you. You can do this with your cameras off. So before we go into this, I know a lot of the people that I work with, and I'm one of these people too, can be very empathic, highly sensitive. So I want to first have you imagine a bubble of white light around you, and you might close your eyes to do this. Just imagine, about a foot out of light, a protective bubble that is around you going into this exercise. And when you feel like it's ready, okay, I think mine's ready. We're going to go into the exercise. So I'd like you to hopefully have this on gallery view on your computer. If not, go ahead and do that. Set your gaze on one of the women in the space. I'll give you a second to do that. Now, I want you to think about this is a whole human. This woman has hopes, dreams, fears, failures, pain she doesn't tell anyone about. I want you to think of the times perhaps she may have cried herself to sleep or laughed completely without restraint, maybe even peed herself a little. Think of when she may have twirled in a dress or climbed a tree Times she may have looked in the mirror and judged her body, felt badly about herself. Times she may have held herself back. And times she did something brave. Times she surprised herself. Times where she did something that she felt really, really proud of. And times where she felt like maybe she could have done better. She is a whole person with hopes, fears, dreams, and things she doesn't tell anyone, just like you. Just take a moment to send her a little love, peace, or joy in whatever way you see fit, whatever that means to you. Set an intention for her. Great. Now you can bring your attention back to yourself, and you can go ahead and shake it off, put your hand on your chest and reconnect back to yourself. And be so curious to hear if anyone wants to share what either of those experiences are like before I go into slides. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think, give me a second. I am not seeing the option to share the screen right now, which is odd. So found it. All right. Guys, let me know when you can see it. Perfect. So, welcome to Burnout Proof, where we will be talking about ending overwhelm, finding balance, and finding fulfillment. And one of the reasons I led us through that exercise just to start, I mentioned that, often we're just so busy running from one thing to the next thing to the next that we're not really always present with like what's really going on with us and what's alive for us. And when we're not connected to ourselves, when we're really overwhelmed, we have a really hard time connecting with others. And when we're feeling burnt out, we often feel very disconnected from other people in our lives and from ourselves and from purpose. And so if you struggled with that exercise, doesn't mean that it's that you did anything wrong. It might just be a barometer that's like, oh yeah, like maybe I need to look at that. Like, where am I not allowing myself presence in my life that I can't be present for others? I'm seeing one of the intentions now from Superna. The intention I sent to the other person was, I hope you get everything you want in this life. So simple, but made me feel emotional thinking about it and sending that intention back to myself. Absolutely. So not to get too woo-woo in here, but absolutely believe that everything that you're sending out to someone else is also something that you're sending to yourself. Thanks for sharing that, Superna. It was really beautiful. So we're here for Burnout Proof Life. We're going to talk about what causes burnout and overwhelm and how can we really make changes so that we feel more empowered and more in control of what's actually going on in our lives. So we'll go ahead and there we go. So if you're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, you can change jobs, you can read books, You could take a yoga class, you could go to therapy. I did that for at least 15 years. You can meditate, but until you really get to the root, you'll keep repeating the same patterns. And it's because you'll always be stuck kind of just playing catch up on all the stuff that's like creating the challenges to begin with. So I want to start dismantling some of those things, demystifying it a little bit in this training tonight so that you can walk away more clear and with some actionable steps of ways that you can start integrating some of these concepts into your life so that you can start feeling more balanced and fulfilled. But we're in a pandemic. Of course I'm burnt out. So yes, like I'm not here to make anyone wrong. If you're feeling burnt out, it's not like your fault. And I would say most people are experiencing some level of, prolonged stress or burnout at this stage in the game. We are experiencing a global trauma. There's no way to really like get around that. But we can implement tools that make us more resilient to those stresses, more responsive, more buoyant, so that it doesn't take us all the way down, because it's hard enough as it is, right? So I would suggest that more than likely, you probably have been in patterns that have created imbalances for you already in place prior to the pandemic. And the pandemic perhaps was, the straw that broke the camel's back, the thing that tipped the scales, that just made it completely unmanageable. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But I would say, as awful as it is, what if this was like a beautiful invitation, an illumination of all the ways that we've been going about our lives in ways that have not been serving us, that have not been helpful, that, perhaps this just accelerated the process so that we can make changes sooner because we see the error of our ways and we have to learn another way because the stressors keep coming. So we have to expand. We have to build ourselves up. We have to be stronger. We have to learn new tools, new skills. So perhaps it's an invitation to exploring new ways of being in your work and in the world. So I don't want to spend too much time here, but just some of the biological effects of severe stress and anxiety is you're more prone to see danger when there is none. It actually changes the way that your brain zeroes in on information, almost like it changes your sight and your perception. It can be like, here's an example, a real life personal example. So when I'm in a heightened state of anxiety or overwhelm, and I'm kind of in that state, yes, that still happens to me because I'm human. You will too, no matter how much of this work you do. I've noticed a pattern where I tend to see that, maybe there's things that like, I'm worried my partner isn't quite so satisfied with me, or maybe there's like a loss of love there on some level. And it's like almost like clockwork, like the level of anxiety or overwhelm or stress that I am in can almost be correlated to like, oh, okay, I'm also going to see that like, oh, this client might not like me, or, is this person mad at me, or like, oh, my partner doesn't love me as much today. And it's all just a perception based on like my internal state. And when I bring consciousness to that, then I can say like, oh, I see what's happening there. I see what's going on there. Okay. Maybe we, sleep on it and see how tomorrow looks. And it's probably going to look a hell of a lot better. It can also be a lot harder to concentrate. You might find that your productivity is going down, maybe making more careless mistakes. We also go into the fight, flight, freeze, or, some of you may or may not be familiar with the fawn response. So fight obviously is when we're like preparing to fight off a perceived threat or enemy. Flight, we're preparing to run away from that threat. Freeze is, I'm just going to play dead. Some of my procrastinators in here might be familiar with that. And the fawn response is typically shows up in the form of people pleasing, basically just like, this can also be a trauma response too, which I'm not going to dive too much into here today for the purpose of this training. But some people that have these tendencies of fawning, it's because like, that's where their internal safety comes from. If I just please and do everything right, then everything will be okay and I'll be safe, and safe might be, I'll, not get hit. It might be like I have food on the table. It might mean I get love, and we all need love to survive. So just a like understanding of where some of that comes from. And not to stress you out more, but when you're in that like prolonged period of severe stress and anxiety, having that for a prolonged period of time, the elevated heart rate, your higher blood pressure, and the flood of stress hormones like cortisol, it increases your odds of a heart attack, stroke, hypertension. It can also affect your cholesterol levels and cause inflammation in your circulatory system. Ugh, we don't want that, right? And I'm not saying that to stress you out more. In fact, stress in small doses can actually be very beneficial to our body. It's when we're in that chronic, long period of stress that we start seeing the long-term physiological and biological responses. And I don't want that for any of you. So let's talk about that. First of all, why this training is geared specifically towards women. You know, I shared a little bit about my mission at the beginning of this training about why I believe so deeply in empowering women specifically. And it's no surprise that women are disproportionately affected by burnout. According to a survey by LinkedIn, we have 74% of women saying that they were very or somewhat stressed by work for work-related reasons, compared to just 61% of males. And then a separate analysis showed that mothers in paid employment are 23% more likely to experience burnout. And then an estimated 2.35 million working mothers in the US have suffered from burnout since the start of the pandemic, specifically due to unequal demands of home and work. And so the result is what was already disproportionate has now just been magnified, and women again end up disempowered. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I did just want to acknowledge there are both external and internal sources of burnout. This is just a graphic I copied and pasted from the internet, but some of the external reasons that we might be experiencing burnout in the workplace, it could be like contradictory instructions, poor internal communication, poor work organization, lack of clarity about our roles, poor teamwork, lack of positive feedback. But I really want to focus more on the internal, because I'm really interested in how we can be leaders in our own lives, and that from that place of empowerment, we can figure out if we can make enough of the internal shifts that our workplace is at the worst case scenario tolerable, but perhaps far better than we imagined, or we have the confidence and the level of self-assuredness and self-trust that if we have worked on all those things in the workplace is still just clearly not a supportive environment for us, that we feel empowered to leave and pursue new opportunities. So the internal reasons that we might experience burnout can be from like a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves internally, perfectionism, a strong need for recognition, that external validation, always wanting to please other people, feeling, I'm pretty sure that's a typo, feeling replaceable, suppressing your own needs, overestimation to deal with challenges, and using work as a substitute for your social life, you know, where that's like the only thing, then, you know, if you have a bad day at work, then it's going to feel like you have a bad life because it's pretty much your whole life, right? So it's very imbalanced. This is for me, and it's also for you. Reminder to take a breath. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. So, Mythbuster, it's not about your job. I say that with an asterisk because it may be your job, but until you do the internal work, you don't really know. And so that's why I try to stress that you have to do the internal work first, because otherwise you're just going to go to job to job to job, and you're going to keep repeating the same patterns. You're going to find yourself burning out, resentful, overwhelmed, lacking confidence, getting passed up for promotions, if that's what you're going after. And so you have to do the internal work first in order to see, you know, which one is which, okay? So you have to understand that you are contributing to the circumstances. And I know that can be a really hard pill to swallow. You might be like, but my workplace is awful. My manager micromanages me. There's no communication. There's no organization. I get it, because I've been in those situations too. And I know it doesn't feel good. Okay. Not saying that there's not toxic workplaces out there, or workplaces that have a lot of room for improvement, to say the least. But until you really understand some of the root causes and how you're contributing, it's hard to really know for sure how much is really your job, and if it's actually going to be a good move for you to even change jobs. So I wanted to dive into 6 sneaky success saboteurs. So these are ways that you could potentially be self-sabotaging. I see a lot of ambitious, high-achieving women fall into many of these categories. You might recognize several in yourself. This isn't to make you wrong. Like, trust me, there's like it. So many women experience this, and I'll talk about why that happens in a minute. These are things that might not necessarily seem like bad things on the surface, but when they become overused, that's when it creates an imbalance. So let's dive into some of these, what do I want to call them? Like personalities or masks that we might wear, okay? The people pleaser. Make sure everyone's happy all of the time. The perfectionist plays small by waiting for things to be perfect. So maybe you hold back on getting that job application in because you just want to make sure the cover letter is just so, or maybe you don't speak up and share an idea in a meeting because you're just not sure that like you have all the words there. You don't fully trust yourself. The helper, always saying yes and jumping into help when you actually mean no. The overfunctionist, the one who keeps loading more and more onto her plate over and over. The overachiever, more concerned with checking the next thing off the list than anything else. So this can mean really take you out of like presence. Like maybe you're the one that's like reading a bedtime story to your kid, but you're thinking about all the other things on your to-do list. Or maybe you're like making love to your partner or boyfriend or whatever and girlfriend, and you're preoccupied about like, oh, there's all these other things I could be doing. And the nice girl, the version of you that doesn't speak up when you need to speak up. You know, you might also think of this as like the good girl, the one that just wants to be nice, to get along, to be agreeable. And that's not really setting you up for success or the people in your organization. So these are all ways that we as women are unconsciously giving away our power. It saps us from our joy, and it results in us feeling bitter, resentful, burnt out, overwhelmed, or wanting to just like burn it all down. Like, I just want to, burn down everything I've ever done. I don't ever want to work again. I just want to run away and hide and escape to an island somewhere. And they're not bad per se, right? Like, it's not bad to, be perfectionistic and have like an attention to detail. It's not bad to be really driven to like move forward on, action items that you have on your list, or to be concerned with like achievement or being really helpful to other people. They're not bad per se. But when they are overused, your greatest strengths will become your greatest weaknesses. And this is what a trap I see so many successful women fall into, is they have this idea that like, because they did all of these things to get to where they were and they've made it this far in their career, that must be the pathway to continue accelerating in their career. But they tend to do more and more of those things and fall further and further behind. And the reason it's not working is because it's creating an imbalance. So I wanted to talk about how we come back to balance. And this is one way of illustrating what this imbalance is. So I'm going to chat with you a little bit about masculine and feminine energy. So regardless of whether we identify as male or female, we all possess masculine and feminine energies. And when the masculine energy is balanced, this can present as logic, as confidence, focus, strength, stable, clear, goal-oriented. And when we're in our feminine, in a balanced feminine, healthy feminine, we're intuitive, we're generous, we're nurturing, we're caring, we're receptive, we're grateful. And when we have the synergy between the two, that's where we step into balance and to heightening our success and our fulfillment, because we're not, leaning too far from one or the other. And there's actually research that was done by Stanford that showed that women that were able to balance the feminine and the masculine got promoted. I want to say it was about 3 times more than any other type of person. So more than the hyper masculine males, more than the hyper masculine women, and more than the more feminine leaning males, and certainly more than the more feminine leaning women. Now, when we're in a wounded masculine, that can look like over attachment to success, being really critical, judgmental, overly stuck in the mind, not in touch with your emotions, and might even be more aggressive. And then the wounded feminine can show up as overthinking and self-doubt, insecurity, seeking external validation, being stuck in victimhood, which I know it can feel like a really safe place to be. It's like, I'm not the problem, everyone else is the problem. And then I get to stay, safe, and I don't have to change. And I'm happy here, even though it's creating a lot of challenges, because it's just comfortable. It's just what I know. It also, wounded feminine is poor boundaries. It can look like people pleasing and coming from like a desperation of love, of like, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. Okay. And so a lot of the women that come to this work are often imbalanced. We see a lot of women that are hyper in their masculine, really focused on driving everything forward, being able to check the next thing off the list, and overemphasis on achievement and that, attachment to the success. And they've pretty much forgotten all these other aspects of themselves. Or they're in the wounded feminine and, kind of operating out of the hypermasculine and wounded feminine. So drive, do. You can think of the masculine as the doing and the feminine as the being. We need both, right? Like, think about sex, right? You need the doing and you need the being. You need the driving and you need the projecting forward and the receiving to create life. That's what happens when there's a synergy between the two. And it's not just in sex. This is just like in every aspect of our lives. When we are in harmony and flowing between these two energies in a balanced way, that's when we're able to create and sustain life in ourselves and create the life that we really want for ourselves. Are you guys still with me? How's this landing? I'm going to pop up the chat for a second. All right, feel free to pop in and share your comments as we go, and I'll periodically pull it up and take a look. Why are we imbalanced, right? Why is this so common amongst most women that I talk to? And I'm fully have been there myself. Well, it's a combination of societal conditioning and biological responses. So a lot of this is just ingrained in our culture, especially if you're in Western culture. There's a lot of emphasis on achievement, on productivity, which are all very masculine traits. We're also very socialized as women to be very caregiving, nurturing, doing a lot of things just out of the goodness of our heart. In fact, it wasn't until really the last 20 or 30 years that we really started being paid for the work that we did. Most of the work that we did, the labor that we did, was just expected to be done, out of the goodness of our hearts, So a lot of this archaic way of being in the world is something that's just been passed down. We are in the midst of a revolution. And by being as a part of this training, you are already on the cusp, this new emerging, this new wave of thought, this new way of being, where, some people call it like the rising of the divine feminine. Maybe you've heard of this. So it's up to us to be the change, as if we haven't done enough. Like, we have to be the ones that create that shift. No one else is going to do it for us. One of my favorite stories from one of my clients that was leaning into her feminine. This is someone that was like gone through multiple burnouts, a lot of like push, burnout, push, burnout, and had really hard time like letting go of perfectionism and just always striving and pushing herself, very much in the masculine. After some work together, she leaned into the feminine energy trait of desire. And she was a business owner, so she had a little bit more flexibility in her schedule, but there are certainly ways that you can incorporate this into your life if you don't work for yourself. She woke up one day and she was like, I feel like a desire to put on comfy clothes, eat peanut butter out of the jar, and just curl up on the couch with a book. And this was huge for her. She was someone that was like, I have to stay on track all the time, must stay in control and control everything that's happening. And this time she decided to feed her desire. So she did all of those things, spent a few hours giving herself full permission to just lean into that pleasure, that experience of relaxation, of reading a book, of not needing to do anything. And she was planning on doing that the whole day, but after just a couple of hours, she was like, you know what, like, I feel good. And then she was like, I want to like work on some of that stuff. And it wasn't coming from a should place. It was coming from a spark of like creativity. That's feminine energy, is like that creative energy. We literally create life. She had a spark of creative energy and was like, I want to work. And so she set out to work, and she accomplished in 45 minutes, which she had mapped out like at least 6 hours to do. And that's one of my favorite stories of someone that just like used energy and her intuition and trusting herself to her advantage and got so much more done as a result. So it's not your fault if you struggle with any of these things. It's how most of us were conditioned, but it is our responsibility to change it. Also, before moving forward, just want to mention a deep truth, something that I've noticed in my life and in the people that I work with. Also, this is Zola. She is representing tonight. Your world is a mirror. So the more you embody your innate worth, the more others are going to recognize and match that back to you. And that can look like promotions, that can look like respecting boundaries, but it has to come from you owning that first. I own my boundaries. I know my worth. If you're experiencing self-doubt, that's what's going to be reflected back to you. That means you might be passed up for opportunities. Maybe you're micromanaged. If you're feeling unworthy, then that's reflected back. You know, this is where you might feel like underpaid, underappreciated. And that can be tough, but also it's really cool to be able to recognize like when something isn't quite going the way that we think it should, like getting curious about like, what is this reflecting back to me? What is going on internally? Because most of the time, these are blind spots for us. We're not usually fully aware. That can be one of the benefits of working with a coach too, to help kind of reveal some of these things, the ways that we are holding ourselves back that are keeping us and standing in the way from the life that we know we're capable of, the life that we truly envision for ourselves, you know, because there's all these blocks in the way. Oh, thanks for the feedback, Ariel. I'm glad you're loving this. So how do we overcome this? Well, we got to look at the roots, and the roots come from primarily our thoughts and our beliefs. So one of the biggest ways that this manifests is in the form of thought errors. So now thought errors are patterns or ways of perception that we're perceiving certain information or circumstances that aren't entirely accurate, but are incredibly convincing because our brain has gotten very, very good at telling us how to perceive information. And I'm willing to bet that at some point in your life, and maybe in your early, more formative years, that these ways of thinking helped you survive in some sort of way, helped you make your way through the world. But maybe they're not serving you anymore. And they're probably creating more self-doubt, more anxiety, more overwhelm. And you can create really powerful changes. I've seen it's like one of the most incredible transformative practices that I teach my clients in my one-to-one coaching work is how to recognize the thoughts as they're happening, how to see them clearly for what they are, and how to invite yourself into a new way of perceiving the information. And the level of empowerment or relief or proactiveness that comes from that. People that are breaking through from procrastination or from shutting down or from holding themselves back in some way, really coming from a place of oh, I'm back in my power. I have an action plan. I know what I can do to better the situation. I'm not a victim to my circumstance. And there's another way of looking at this. It's so, so incredible. And just a quick way I can illustrate this for you is just think about the last time that you felt really upset about something. And I'll just give you a second to just recall something that happened, maybe someone said something to you, or, you said something to you about not measuring up in some way. And I just want you to think about how much energy did that take up, and how did that energy feel? And how did it affect the rest of your day? And how did it affect your confidence and your self-worth? And how did it affect the way that you showed up or didn't? In the way that maybe you really would have liked to. And if you think about the last time you judged yourself as not enough somehow, maybe you feel like your performance wasn't good enough, or maybe you feel like you weren't productive enough. When you talk to yourself like that, do you feel energized or do you feel depleted? Now, I know a lot of people are really hard on themselves because I think that that's what keeps them sharp. That's their edge. They think I have to do that because otherwise I'm just going to be a big, fat, sloppy loser and I'm not going to do anything. So it's another thought error. It's a lie. But it can be really sneaky and insidious. But most of the time, this is running on constantly in the background of our minds, mostly unconsciously. And if you think about that, day after day, hour after hour, all of these thoughts that are happening unconsciously and maybe very partial consciously, but not really connecting to exactly the way that our stream of consciousness is affecting not only the way we feel, but also how we act. That drains a lot of energy. That is a big, fat energy drain, right? I'll tell you what, one of my clients that had multiple experiences of burnout, she applied this work. She was also having massive anxiety. First thing when she woke up in the morning, she was having anxiety when she's trying to go to bed at night. When she started applying this work, literally within a matter of 2 weeks, her anxiety went from a 9 to a 2. And she started sleeping. She started waking up with energy. She realized wow, I was creating a lot of that stress response in myself. We talked about the external and the internal reasons for burnout. And when we're thinking about stressors, we have external stressors and we have internal stressors. A lot of the time, we're creating a lot of our own stress just by our internal dialogue and our own perceptions of the world and of ourselves and of other people. And we actually have a choice. When you start bringing awareness to your thoughts, you actually can choose to feel differently. And when you feel differently, you act differently and you create a new result. So underneath beliefs, or underneath thoughts, we also have our beliefs. And I would say that a lot of our thoughts are really just kind of the trees sprouting up from beliefs that probably are not healthy for us, not helping us. Our beliefs feed into the sneaky success saboteurs, our beliefs about like what it means to be like a high achieving woman, as a successful woman. Maybe we believe that we have to be over functioning and overachieving, got to keep up with the men. It's the only way I can prove myself is I have to go above and beyond, right? Or I have to get it perfect. It's the only way I'm going to get that next stage, because otherwise they're going to think I suck or I'm not going to be good enough. And our beliefs keep us in our neat, tidy little box. It keeps us in this false sense of safety and keeps us playing small instead of really claiming the joy, balance, fulfillment, and success that we all deserve. And a lot of our beliefs, like most of the time, our beliefs, unless we've been doing a lot of thought and belief work, are not beliefs of our own choosing. They literally have just been handed down to us through our family, through, experiences we had growing up. Up until age 7, we do not have the mental filters for we don't have the mental development to discern, what we want to accept as truth and what we reject and choose a new belief. So most of us, that's where like our software of our brain, our building blocks are kind of just like the foundation is laid. And most of us, until something happens and we're like, whoa, this is not working for me anymore. Most of us just continue going through our lives, like just accepting that as our truth. And most of it's unconscious. It's just like the building blocks of how we see the world. But you can bring that into your consciousness and you can create and choose new beliefs that create a new reality for yourself. And I'm realizing if you haven't delved into this work, that might sound hokey, but it's just true. When you have new beliefs, you behave differently, you see different things, you perceive the world differently, and you create different results. Here's like a belief that one of my clients had when we were first getting started. She was like, I can't even tell my partner that I'm seeking coaching. He'll think that it's weak. He's super high achieving and he'll just think that like, I just need to like buck up and just be strong and push through. And so I didn't think she was going to tell him. And then like, after she signed up, she sent me an email and she was like, I actually told him and he was over the moon. I was totally surprised. He was so excited. I found out he had worked with a coach a while back too. And so there are many times that we are telling ourselves a story based on a belief that we have about something that has no basis in reality. There are a lot of times they're assumptions. Another belief that we uncovered with one of my clients, I call this her I don't belong story. So she's been working towards a promotion in her company. It's a pretty prestigious company with a pretty rigorous interviewing process. And she's had a lot of internal blocks along the way towards stepping towards that big interview. And as we started peeling back the layers of what was going on for her and started looking at just some of her beliefs around like money and success and what that looked like for her growing up, she realized, growing up, like I was kind of like middle to lower class, like I had more money than some of the kids in my school, but I wasn't like the rich kids. And, I was told that I could like go to their birthday parties, but like I couldn't go to ballet class with them because my family was more conservative with their money. And she realized that same mental model was the same model she was carrying in with her and the roles she wanted to go after in her organization. She felt like she could go to the organization party, but she couldn't join the ballet class, which was like that higher, more elite level, because she still felt like an outsider, like she didn't fully belong. And so we've been working a lot on like imposter syndrome with her and a lot of the thoughts and beliefs that were causing all the ways that she dismissed, her accomplishments. She's very accomplished. But it's very common in women to dismiss all the different ways that we have actually achieved what we have in our lives. So the way that you end suffering with all of this is to start questioning the stories that you are telling yourself. When you catch yourself in a story of like, that's not going to work, just notice it, catch it, and be like, wait a minute, is that true? What if it does work? What if it goes even better than I thought? that can go, all the what ifs of like all the what ifs that usually are like anxiety and like what could go wrong. Like you can create a what if like spiral up instead of like driving yourself down into the ground with like overwhelm and anxiety. It's like, what if everything goes incredibly well? What if it goes even better than I possibly could have imagined? What if everything works? What if this happens? What if this happens? So most of the time we default into the anxiety and fear because our brain's just doing its job trying to protect us. We have very ancient brains, parts of our brains not caught up with the rest of society and what else is going on in our lives. And so when we get caught in that anxiety and the overwhelm and fear, our brain is just trying to protect us, like, whoa, there could be danger here. Like maybe we should just play it safe. But you have to catch those stories, and not saying that it's not good to take pause and to like, take those things into consideration. But you as your highest self, which comes from your prefrontal cortex, the more newly developed part of our brain, has to decide, do I want to take counsel from my fear? Is this fear coming from, a warranted place? Or is this something that is just trying to keep me in a box, trying to keep me safe? And if it's just trying to keep you safe, then you can say, thank you for doing your job. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. Like we've got it under control. And then you proceed. And yes, if you're feeling scared, you're going to be scared. And like, that's normal. You can feel the fear and do the thing anyway. I would not be where I am in my life right now if I stopped every time I felt fear. I know there's people that are way more accomplished than me, but if I told you how fucking scared I've been every single step of the way of my journey, I would say I'm one of the bravest fucking people I know, because of how much fear I've had and how much resistance I've had to push through. So you can do it too. Take a breath, everyone. How's everyone feeling? Oh, I'm glad that this is landing for you, Amanda. Thanks for the feedback. Are we on time? 7:30. Okay. So another way to combat overwhelm and burnout is making sure you're balancing your nervous system. So just because a stressor has left is not a sign that you've actually completed the stress response. And so here's what I mean by this. The stressor is basically the thing that's causing you stress. That might be a thought that you're having, something you're afraid is going to happen. It might be a conversation with your boss, or, a project that you're not sure how it's going to go. And so you're worried it's, maybe it's going to fall apart, or you're not sure it's going to pan out the way that you hoped. Once that stressor is gone, it doesn't mean that your body knows that the threat is gone. So it's important that we're completing the stress response. And here's what I mean by this. Here's like a way that I can illustrate this for you. So just close your eyes if you want for a minute, and just imagine for a minute that you are being chased by a lion. You're out in the wild. This is like centuries ago. You're being chased by a lion, running and running and running and running towards your village. Reach the cave, and someone in your group spears the lion, and the lion falls with a thud to the ground. And you look and you see the lion fall, and then everyone starts jumping up and down and cheering, and there's a big celebration, and you have a huge feast. Your body's completed the stress response. Like, whew, the threat is gone. I'm celebrating. I'm connected, eating good food. Okay, good. I know the threat's gone. Now, imagine that you're being chased by a lion. You're running. You're still like only halfway to your village. And all of a sudden you hear a thud, and you kind of slow down and you turn around, and the lion's just lying on the ground, and your heart's pounding. You're like, oh my God, like, I guess the threat's gone. Like, I guess he's dead. I guess I'll just go home. Okay, I guess I'll catch my breath and just walk home. And you get back and you're just like, yeah, like I almost got eaten by a lion, but I didn't. And they're like, oh, cool. Your body does not know that threat is gone. Your heart's still pounding. There's still all this adrenaline running because there hasn't been that completion process. So the completion process can happen in modern day by vigorous exercise, aiming for like 20 to 60 minutes. It can be through dancing or like having like a party. It can be through sex or hugging a loved one for like 20 seconds, long time, centered in your own weight. So not like an overly like leaning or like one of those like half armed hugs, but like a real like heart to heart hug. Tells your body like, oh, I'm in safety now. I'm in safety. Other ways that you can complete the stress response are like through the arts or music, any way of like expressing yourself. If you are very active in burnout, so this means that like, you are maybe more in like the depression stage, feeling like no energy, really struggling to focus, it might look a lot like major depression. You want to avoid strenuous activity. So you don't want to do the like 20 to 60 minutes of vigorous exercise, because even though exercise can be good for you, vigorous exercise like that is actually also a stressor on the body. So if you're in that very active burnout state, like you don't want to add more stress, like your adrenals, like your body is like already like maxed out. It needs all the nourishment it gets. So for you, that movement's going to look like yoga, walks. You're going to be doing more of the like expressive, like arts or like cuddling or things like that to support your nervous system. We also have to reduce overwhelm with some healthy structure, which is the masculine, the balanced masculine. So I know I touched a little bit on like the masculine and the feminine. You can think of the masculine as being the riverbanks and the feminine as being the river. The masculine is the structure that allows the feminine to flow and be, a roaring, powerful river. One of the best ways that we can do this, where we're balancing, that healthy feminine and a healthy masculine, is by honoring our boundaries. Now, the reason I started with the thoughts and beliefs work is because if your thoughts and beliefs are not setting you up for success, it's going to be very hard to effectively set boundaries, because if you don't value yourself, if you don't have confidence, if you're already overwhelmed and stressed out, and setting a boundary is going to feel like you're taking an extra step out on a ledge to like stick your neck out and stick up for yourself, you're not going to do it. It's going to be easier. It's going to feel safer to just default to saying yes, because your body is already overwhelmed. And the idea of sticking up to someone can feel like an added threat or stressor. So you'll always default to like, sure, I'll do whatever you need, even if it's not going to help us and actually just going to make us more overwhelmed and stressed out. So boundaries are the invisible and visible lines that separate me from you, my needs, my thoughts, my ideas, my feelings from yours. And boundaries can be especially challenging if you're a highly sensitive person or an empath, because you're more tuned into someone else's emotional experience, to someone else's nervous system. And so it can be that much more appealing to try to people please them. And I always say that like, it might feel like a temporary relief to say yes to someone just to feel their sense of relief, because then you're like, oh, okay, I feel better for a second too. And then you're like, oh shit, what did I just do? And now I'm like, stuck working, a bunch of extra hours this week that I hadn't anticipated on. And now I'm kind of resentful, or, I'm just feeding the cycle, right? So there's extra support that we can bring in for those of you that are highly sensitive or empathic structurally in your day, that can help mitigate some of that overwhelm, in addition to, the thought and belief work. So boundaries are absolutely crucial when it comes to managing overwhelm and preventing burnout. And I would say by and large, women in general are not modeled this. I know I was not modeled this through my mom, just like I know she wasn't modeled this through her mom. Like I said, a lot of the patterns that we have now are just things that we've been conditioned or socialized for. We haven't been modeled it. And that's why no one here should feel any sense of like judgment towards themselves or towards someone else. Because like, I genuinely believe everyone's doing the best that they can with what they know and what they were given. And it's incredible that you all are here tuning into this training, because you are already beginning to form some of those new building blocks, laying down new roots, new ways of being. A couple of examples for boundaries with some of the people I've worked with. For example, the client L, she started earning more respect from her family and she was getting praise from her manager. She won an award at work. She started having more time and energy. So she actually started spending more time out with friends. Whereas before she felt like she was always like just kind of hiding and like just wanting to like close her door and go to her room at the end of work because she was just so incredibly drained. And her friends and family members also started to understand boundaries. She was like, this is what I'm doing now, and this is how it is. And she actually started teaching them how to do the same thing too. It was really cool. Her anxiety went way down and her confidence skyrocketed. She was someone that was struggling a lot with procrastination. She felt like she was bad at her job. And when we started implementing all of these different things, these foundational pieces, like her confidence, the procrastination stopped. She woke up in the morning and just was like, well, I can either do it now or I can like suffer throughout the whole day and then do it. Instead, she started just charging the day and doing it, so totally surprising herself, and then finishing work early. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There was also my client S. She started creating win-wins on her team when she was setting boundaries instead of saying like, yes, 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 I'll do it. Like, don't worry, I'll take care of it for you. Even though she had just been promoted and felt a certain sense of responsibility to, be a team player, she realized that she had certain priorities that she had to focus on, and she had to have that be her number one focus. So she found ways to provide support without doing it for someone, finding a better alternative for someone. This built her confidence, created such a sense of relief for her. She was promoted twice just within a 4-month period. And she also improved her sleep, her overall health, and overall just was like, wow, like I feel like I have my life back. It's really powerful stuff. So healthy structure, like when we're talking about like the balance of masculine and feminine, it's not too rigid, it's not too loose. It's something that helps you prioritize your tasks. Like imagine like the river in the riverbanks. If there's no riverbanks, then we're just kind of like all over the place. We're pretty much just a puddle. We're not flowing anywhere. But when you have the healthy structure of the riverbanks, then, that creative energy, that vitality can flow. So some other things that you might think about incorporating could be a morning meeting with yourself. That way you can just kind of get clear, organize what your priorities are for the day before you start getting asks from like every other direction. You get pinged for this and an email about that, and then like an unexpected meeting. It's going to make it a lot easier to set boundaries if you at least are already clear on kind of like what you have going on that day. And I would even say on a weekly basis, you can do like a short like weekly review where you kind of have a sense of like, what are my top priorities this week? So that, if something comes up or someone's asking for something, you already have clear in your mind, like what's already on the table. And that way, you can either say no, or you can say like, these are kind of like what I have going on. Which one of those would you like me to deprioritize in order to prioritize this new thing? Or I can help you with that, but I'm going to need like an additional person to help me with XYZ. So you're creating solutions. And bonus is you can do this to an upbeat song to boost the mood, get your energy going. And like I said, it helps you be better with boundaries. And I'm just going to pop in chat. Okay. See some people taking out, but that's okay. Thank you all for keeping in. So I'm going to head and take a breath. So some things to keep in mind that are really freaking cool. You are going to be somebody's ancestor. So what you do today actually impacts those who are coming after you. And I hold the belief, this may not resonate with you, but I hold the belief that when we heal, we don't just heal the future generations that are coming after us. I believe we heal the generations, all the women that came before, the women who suffered, the women who were silent, the women who were abused, the women that were hurt, the women that played small, that just tried to keep safe. We're creating a new standard, and I believe we heal the future and the past in the present with what we do today. And one of my favorite mindset shifts, especially if you're one of those empathic, highly sensitive people that's like worried about being the one person on your team that takes a day off from work and takes a damn vacation because everyone's burnt out and you don't want to like pile on work for other people. Or you're afraid to leave your job because, you know, there's other people that are suffering and depending on you're all kind of in it together. Is you or someone else, other woman's permission slip to claim a new standard in her life too, to say like, this is not acceptable for me. And just like it's not acceptable for me, it doesn't have to be acceptable for you either. You can be paid more. You can find more fulfillment. You can claim more joy, more balance. Maybe everyone else on your team wants to take a vacation too, but everyone's scared to do it. What if you were a leader and they were like, oh, thank God someone did it because I really need a vacation too. And now I have a permission slip. I see that it's okay. You know, pretty cool to think about. So with that said, if you've been trying to work on this stuff on your own and you've either hit a wall or you're seeing gaps, but would rather just follow a proven method and not just kind of like be piecemealing it together on your own, like I did for like almost 20 years. Or if you're just feeling really lit up and activated by what I've been talking about today and you want to explore it further, I have a really incredible one-to-one coaching program, and there's only a few spots left before we go to waitlist. So I would really encourage you to reach out to me and I'll share, you know, what that could look like. If you're wanting to explore what this could look like deeper, you're wanting like kind of like more personalized eyes on your current circumstances. And like, if this is something that could be a good fit for you, I'd be so happy to have a conversation with you and help you figure out like what you really need to get to where you want to go. And keep in mind that there may be things that hold you back from coaching. And I know that I speak from experience, things that like held me back before I took, you know, things that felt edgy or like a leap or scary or stretchy, is like the overthinking, the low self-worth, the low energy. Like, I just don't know if I have the capacity for this, you know, I don't value myself. Those are the very things that the coaching is designed to help you move through from an empowered place and from a place of ease. So if that is something you're curious about exploring, of course, there's no obligation, but if you just want to explore what that might look like for you, you can do that by booking a call with me. And I'll put it in the chat in a minute. But the website to book a call is calendly.com/Kim Irving/success strategy call. And if you don't see a time that works for you, just send me an email or a message on social media, and I'll do my best to accommodate you within reason. This is for you if you are in a place in your life where you're like, I am empowered, I'm ready to lean into self-trust and into possibility, and I'm willing to get just a little bit uncomfortable in order to reap great rewards, because I recognize that I have to be willing to do some things different, and that sometimes that's a little uncomfortable, but I know I'm not going to be doing it alone. And I know there's going to be a step-by-step process. Like, I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to stay overwhelmed. This program is not for you if you're more committed to the victimhood or your fear than a vision of where you're going, right? Like we did an exercise at the beginning. You decided, like, this is where I'm going. And I'm not saying that my program is the only pathway to get there or that it's right for you. I wouldn't even know until I had a conversation with you. But stay committed to that piece of you that knows where you want to go, that knows how you want to feel, and on some level knows that you deserve the support and the pathway to get there. Okay? I'm not saying that all the fear or doubt or, you know, unworthiness wounds aren't going to pop up. They will. That's why the work exists in the first place. And that's why it's so supportive. I also want to normalize that fear and doubt are a normal part of doing anything that's like outside of our comfort zone, anything that could be different or new. So I would say that fear and doubt can be healthy. Like I said, you just want to discern, like, is this a real threat, or is this just like might ego, my sense of self feels threatened by this because it means I might have to do something different and it might be uncomfortable. And I don't know how it's going to go. And one of the great ways I like to reframe, like when I feel fear or anxiety, is that it's a sign that I'm doing something worthwhile, right? Like going live, doing trainings like this used to give me tremendous anxiety. I used to have to self-medicate with anti-anxiety medication just to like do a customer service job answering phones. Like I couldn't answer the phone. So the fact that I do these now is just like mind blowing. But there was a time where it was incredibly uncomfortable for me and still experience the mild discomfort sometimes, but I know that it's a sign that I'm growing, that I'm like leaning into like that commitment of like where I'm going and who I want to be in the world and how I want to serve and how I want to show up and the lifestyle I want to lead and the lives I want to impact. So that might be a nice reframe for you too in your life, not just for coaching, but anytime you're like thinking about like exploring something new, a new hobby or a promotion at work or leaving a job. It's like, if you're feeling that fear, the anxiety, it's like, this is good. This is juicy. This means I'm leaning into an edge. And that's always a good sign. So another deep breath. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share screen. If I can figure out how. Okay, and we're back. So I wanted to open this up for Q&A for anything regarding anything we talked about or any things that you're experiencing in your own life that you'd like some feedback on. Now is your time.
Have to go, but this was really amazing. Thank you. So much value. Oh my gosh. I have a lot of notes.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Sounds good. All right. Any questions? All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night.